Hi, I'm Brian Schrader, and you're listening to Outstanding in Your Field, powered by Pioneer Agronomy. I'm here with my co-hosts, agronomist Carl Joran and Crystal Williams.
Think of us as IT for your crops. If we know how to fix your issues, we'll tell you. And if not, we've probably got a workaround.
And if we don't, we'll find one because Mother Nature isn't like an on-off switch.
On today's episode, we have a guest, Ryan White. So we've already discussed the seed treatment that goes onto the seed, planting best practices, both on the planter as well as from an agronomic standpoint. But we thought we would take a moment to talk about what differentiates the quality of seed as we go into the bag. And so Ryan White is our guest, and he has quite a career with production. So Ryan, would you take a moment and share about your history, a little bit about yourself, as well as we celebrate 100 years of Pioneer, what excites you the most?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's almost crazy to think about. I'm starting my 29th year in the industry. And when you think about I actually started my career in Princeton, Illinois as an hourly employee, bagging seed, drying seed, running the treater. And from there, I had the privilege and opportunity to get into what we call our trainee program. Went off to Hedrick, Iowa, where I was a production agronomist of both seed corn and soybeans. There back to Illinois, kind of back home. Grew up in northern Illinois, Humboldt, Illinois area, where my family farms, and I still farm today with my brother. But moved back to Woodhull, Illinois as an agronomist, and then made the leap from production to sales in that area. I had the privilege to work with just some outstanding sales reps over my career, and then I had the privilege to become a plant manager. I've run a plant, I've run a sales territory, and I've had the privilege last several years to be a regional production director working with several of our seed plants across the Midwest and Canada. And so it's exciting times, getting to celebrate the 100th year, like you talked about. One, just the impact that Pioneer has had on people and sales reps and our communities. Then think about the products and where we've come from in traits. So just in my career, 1997 was one of the first launch of traits, and to where we are today, where traits are just part of what we do, right? We wouldn't even think about a world without traits and genetics and seed treatments and the combination it takes to make a great product. So for me, seeing that evolution and thinking about what's coming next in gene editing and the next set of traits that are in the portfolio and native traits for disease management and yield improvement. It's going to be exciting. I always tell a lot of the folks that are young in their career, I said, I wish I had another 15 or 20 years left because I think it's going to be just an acceleration of that technology. And it's going to be fun to see.
Brian, what do you think as you look back on those technologies? This is a really fun question for me to ask. I mean, especially with your production background, what do you think the technology, if you had to kind of put your finger on one technology that really has made the difference, what would you say? What would be your thought? I mean, I know there's so many of them that throughout our career, but what if you could just settle on one, what would you say?
Corn board trait came first, and the Roundup trait came in for herbicide protection or for herbicide use. If I had to put it on, though, for me, it was when we finally evolved, at least for what I saw and got to experience, was when we reached the point of the rootworm traits in the marketplace. I can just remember how, corn board changed the game. It's like, wow, we don't even have to scout for corn board anymore. And that was a big deal. And we saw yield protection, but it really amazed me when the rootworm traits came in and we really started to understand how much yield and damage we were losing in fields, especially in areas where, we are heavy corn on corn or some of those areas. And with the trait protection we get now, it just sometimes it's pretty amazing to think. It's almost hard if you weren't around 20 years ago to walk a field and see rootworm damage, and now you walk into a field and see the protection that we have. It's been pretty astounding, and it changed the game and what we can do with rotations and other things and to protect yield. So yeah, to me, that was probably the one that really, really did it. We can talk about herbicide protections and that as well. But, I'll probably mention one that people didn't think about as a technology, but really was in my career in production. And that was the launch that Pioneer did of the Pro Box. I mean,
Yeah.
the Pro Box today is just a package type we get, right? We don't even think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
But, I was around when that first started, and now we manage nearly 1 million boxes to support customers, and the ease and convenience as that's given them to load planners and do the things they do today for efficiency in the field. So those are probably two that, for me, really, I look back, changed the game in both how we protect yield for customers and then how we provided convenience and ease at planting time with the Pro Box.
Yeah, the Pro Box thing is fascinating to me because of how the evolution of that, as an example, every Pro Box at Pioneer has a barcode on it. And if we run into an issue with a Pro Box, we know the life cycle, if you will, of that Pro Box. And so we can go back. We know, all sorts of things, when it came into the plant, when it got cleaned, just all of those kind of things. And that in my mind, just being able to track those as an agronomist, trying to figure out what maybe happened if on occasion we have a problem, being able to track that back and see that barcode even has just been such a remarkable thing in my mind, to be able to kind of follow the history of what's going on. We can trace this stuff way back into the process to be able to try to figure out, what happened beyond just where it came from. We've got a lot of stuff on that. And so that's a really interesting thought. You're right. Not necessarily technology, but definitely a game changer for us from a production and from a shipping standpoint as well.
Yeah. Well, you talk about traceability. I think back early in my career where we started it was, well, we put seed in the bag. We knew roughly where it was grown, where it was packaged. The traceability systems that we have today, I can tell you what field it was grown, where it went, what bagging shift that it happened on, what bagging bin, what dryer bins. I mean, we can track so precisely, and it really allows us to do multiple things. One, um, if there is a customer concern, we can find out very quickly, hey, how did we handle that seed? What can we do to improve for the future? But beyond that, now with the use of big data, we can really start to understand where is quality being impacted in our processes, and can we make improvements in that area, such as the space of drying and seed corn, understanding how many hours per point, the pressures, the moistures, all of those things that impact quality. And then, okay, now we got it from the dryer bin to the bulk bin. How many hours did we have it in there to cool it and get it what we call stabilized or evened out, the moisture fronts through a bin, just like a farmer does in their bin. It's even more important in seed because we want that to grow again the next year. And then, we can go all the way through the process and treating and packaging. And it's starting to allow us to run more scenarios to understand where we're impacting quality. Um, how do we want to improve our equipment? Do we need to change the way we do certain things? And so we're just starting to enter that space where, because of that traceability piece, Brian, the future is going to hold even more improvements in what we do from a handling of our products, which is going to be pretty neat to see.
Okay.
So as I think about like that traceability, I think, Brian and I both are lucky enough to be surrounded by quite a few production or, in similar production geographies, but recognize that many of our listeners probably don't live around seed corn fields or production fields. So would you share a little bit about when, from a standpoint of improving quality and the value that goes into the bag, even just from, obviously we're growing crops, not widgets where you can just build it in a factory. So what are some different practices that we've implemented over the last couple of years or through your career that you think about we've significantly improved like quality standpoint?
Yeah. I'll sound old, but because I can go back before we had mechanical detasseling in our seed fields. When you look at the evolution of what we've done from growing and understanding what's happened, it all starts in the field. Just like with a farmer, it's what we grow, it's how we grow it. So the first and thing I'd really love to highlight is our outstanding seed growers that we work with. I mean, we have some growers that are multi-generational seed growers now. I know there's some growers that, they'll be on their third or fourth generation growing seed. And that knowledge of, fertility management, how to isolate the crop from other crops, being a partner in any new technology that we bring along the way to improve, from fertility management, irrigation management, to insect management. Growers have come on that journey with us as we learn better ways to manage those things. We went from crop scouting fields and literally, hundreds of people walking across seed fields, scouting for insects. We're using models today. We're using weather models and other models to understand and predict insect movement or disease movement, and how much more aggressive we need to be in our seed field management. That's been a game changer. From the world of detasseling, we've gone from, hey, we had to have, all kinds of local communities and crews helping us detassel, to now our mechanical detasseling does 99% of our detasseling for us. And we've even learned we have to up the standards, if you will. Back in the day, what we counted as a good isolation distance or a good detasseling percentage of the females detasseled, we've had to raise those standards because we found, hey, with the onset of traits and the better understanding of genetics and genetic purity, the higher the standard we raise, the better those products perform for our customer. So that's, those have been learnings in the field that we've had, all the way to, it used to be, I grew up as a production agronomist, is keep the field as green as you can, as long as you can. And now we'll have people drive by some of our seed fields and go, wow, that field looks like it's brown and dying. What's going on? That's intentional. We have processes that we lovingly call the default process, that we've learned by working with and understanding our genetics. If we spray a product at a certain time to, for all intents and purposes, stress the plant, it actually protects the seed. And we've increased germination and stress scores and things like that. And if you would have told me we were going to do that 25, 30 years ago, I would have looked like you were crazy. And now it's just a standard operating procedure that we do by understanding our genetics and timing and moistures. So it's been a journey. And so those would just be a few of the highlights I'd have. In the field is where it starts. Then I could go into the plant and all the improvements we've made in how we handle seed in the plant. With that, I'd encourage any customer, seed grower, employee, come to our seed plants, see how we handle seed. You'll notice handling seeds different than handling grain. We're worried about keeping that seed alive, right? So everything we do minimizes impact, how far the seed falls, how fast we move the seed across certain places. So everything we do, we want to make sure is handling that seed well, so its genetic potential is there for our customers.
Yeah. Ryan, I think maybe that's a nice place. As Crystal points out, not all of us are, farmers or even employees are as close to production plants as Crystal and I definitely are. And I've had the opportunity to tour many of the plants that I've, been involved with over the years, whether it's the Grand Rapids soybean plant or the Tipton plant that is a little bit unique in that it does, all three crops for us: corn, soybeans, and wheat. Plymouth, yep. I've had the opportunity to go through. I guess your point about it's much different than grain, maybe just kind of in broad strokes, talk folks that maybe aren't familiar with that process, what it looks like, because we do a lot of things differently. You think about, I always think about drying grain, and, we got folks got tower dryers and things like that. The drying process that we use for seed corn is incredibly different. We know we're starting to plant, or we'll soon be planting a lot of our seed corn, but maybe walk folks through that process in some broad strokes, just so that they kind of understand the care from the very beginning to the end when they see it in the yellow and white bag or in the black pro box, what that really looks like for them.
Yeah. So, after we get all the field activities done and harvest, we're at that target harvest. One of the first things we've learned is harvest moisture is so important. For us, we want to be able to harvest that seed at a time that we can really manage its genetic potential, but not damage it by bringing it in too wet And we definitely don't want to bring it in too dry because that's got challenges as well too. So we actually harvest first everything on the ear. All of our seed corn pickers harvest everything on the ear. So we bring all that whole ear in, and it allows us then to manage our drying process more effectively. So if you think about as we bring it in on the ear, sometimes I'm sure people have seen this. You can harvest on the ear. Sometimes it can be really trashy. Sometimes it can be really clean, depending on the genetics. But and it goes through a husking building. That husking building actually removes the stalks and extra husks that are on the ear. So we want a very clean ear. And the reason that is the more uniform the ears are, the more efficient the drying process is. So we go into each one of our dryers. I consider our dryer buildings. They're kind of like miniature warehouses, if you will. Each building has 22 to 24 dryer bins that hold 12 to 1400 bushels each, and we can control the air in that dryer on the velocity by having the fan speeds. We have burner temperatures that we manage because we really want to control the drying process. Different than commercial corn, we are low and slow, where in commercial corn, it tends to be high and fast, right? So most of the seed corn that goes into our dryers, I would say it's in there anywhere from 3.5 to 4 day turn. So all 3 to 4 days of drying process that corn goes through before it ever goes to the sheller. And then it runs to our sheller buildings where we have essentially modified rotary shellers, and not the aggressive like a combine, but we've changed out many of the insides of our shellers, so it actually has a gentler handling of the seed as it goes through. Again, we want to handle everything as control and handle it as much as we can through the process. So as it gets dried, heads onto our shellers, it goes into our bulk bins, where at that time we're really getting our first samples of what's going into that bulk bin. And that bulk bin is when we get our genetic purity, germinations, all of those things. Before we even put it in a bag, we understand the genetic potential, purity, and germination of that, and even stress emergence scores of that seed that we utilize to really make sure we're getting the best quality we can to our customers. After that, we're on to the conditioning, break it down into kernel sizes and treat and package it. But that harvest process, it takes us 4 to 6 weeks to get all the crop in, from the time we started to the time we finish. And a lot of it is all centered around that drying process and making sure we're handling that seed is both from a temperature and pressure standpoint and handling it as gently as we can.
I remember a couple years ago, just even if you've ever witnessed, I would argue like the field operation of picking seed corn is probably one of my favorite things of watching I don't have technical terms, so just the giant, buckets basically dumping into the trucks. And so you can clarify on what I'm talking about, but very cool, and fun to watch, with my kids and stuff as, it's right across the street from where we're at. But you don't ever think, you think that it would be super fast because they go fast through the field, and you'd assume that it would be really speedy also at the plant. But obviously, to your point of taking that close and careful attention to the quality of the product is definitely evident in that process.
Yeah, those ear corn pickers are fun to watch. 12 and 16-row machines, and the ears come off on a big belt conveyor, right? Again, handling it very gently into a what they call a dump cart. Those dump carts, you're getting them. I can't think of the weight, but it's probably 15 to 20,000 pounds they're lifting into the air and then dumping over the edge of a semi. The first time you watch it, it can be a little. I know when I was first time as agronomist, you want to have the right cart operator putting the seed into those semis as they head to the plants. And but definitely even those ear corn pickers have been changed over time, and the way that they handle the seed, and even the heads and things that we use to again, we don't run at the same speeds. The pickers, they can run the speed of a combine, but the way the head handles it onto the belt conveyors is so much different than it was 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, we're a long way from those old uni harvesters
Oh,
that we had. You know, a lot of these big oxbow machines and everything, they don't even look like they're the same thing. They do the same operation, but boy, they're a lot different than they were for sure.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You don't see a lot of chains carrying things and grinding things up as they go. A lot of it's all belt conveyors inside of it, which is pretty amazing to see how they handle the seed.
Yeah, I always think it's fascinating. One of the things that always strikes me when I go into the plants, Ryan, is just the bumpers and the, you know, 45-degree angles, no hard 90 turns, just all of those things to minimize as much as we can that potential mechanical damage that, you know, would impact seed germination. It's really fascinating to see some of the things. And to be fair to the folks at the plants, there's some real ingenuity in some of these plants in terms of what folks have developed to try to minimize any of that kind of mechanical or bump damage that we are trying to avoid on this seed.
And going
Yeah,
back to the, oh, sorry. I
I
was
know
just
you
gonna
bring
say,
up a good point. You know, a lot of our plants over time, a lot of the engineering has been developed in house. You know, of how we handle the seed. We've got partners that work with us in different engineerings, but our engineering group, we have an engineering group that helps us really look at it because it's pretty easy to say, oh well, we just want to put this in and move the seed over here. Yeah, but we don't want it to fall more than, 36 inches or whatever, 24 inches. We don't want it to fall. We don't want it, we don't want it, we need certain angles because we don't want speed. We want it to slide down. And so in several places of the plant, you'll see, yeah, maybe large, people would come in and go, why do you have such a long runway there? Why do you have an angle that's not maybe, more of a 90 so the seed will flow faster? Well, seed that flows fast and then impacts something is just like a human being. It comes to a sudden stop and there's a bruise typically, right? Well, we don't want to bruise seed. And so everything we're doing is about how to handle that seed gently for sure. And both our engineering group and then, yeah, some of our employees who have come up with just some neat ideas on, how to change transitions out to be easier to clean is another thing because we have so many products that we provide our customer. We don't want to mix those products and we got to be able to clean out in between them. And so a lot of our employees that do the work every day seem to find a way to help us do that better each year, which has just always been a privilege for me to be a part of, to see an employee take an idea and make it into something that provides better seed for our customer.
Mhm. One thing, my company team had just toured the Woodhall location, and I think maybe I don't know if listeners are on here and they're like, oh well, I toured a plant like 10 years ago, or I toured a competitor company plant. It's got to be all the same, right? I mean, same thought process. But I will say, I mean, since about 10 years ago, I toured a different plant, and the amount of technology and changes that have happened even in the last 10 years is so impressive. But a couple of things that I thought that was really interesting at the Woodhall location, given the dry seasons that we've had, one of the challenges we had were some dusty soybeans that were coming out because of that droughty condition, and kind of how they solved a little bit of that and definitely alleviated many of my reps' headaches while trying to manage through those. But can you share a little bit about, how like a seasonal drought like we've experienced the last couple of years affects that, and kind of some solutions that we've resulted in because of that?
Yeah, no, the soybean one, I'll just use that as an example. Yeah, the last couple of years have been really dry falls. I think anybody who's grown soybeans, it's been almost shockingly. I don't think I've heard any farmers say, "Man, I got my soybeans out right at 12 and 14% moisture, like I like to get them." And so with that means we got to handle the seed even more gently, right? And typically, you without some of that, we'll get more dust. First of all, in this industry, it's like anything, we get kind of 1 year to do it, right? We get one cycle and we learn a lot from that. Um, but the collection of that over time has allowed us to start to look at our processes differently. So we started looking at one, working with our growers. Are there things that we can do out at the grower level? Either one, not seeing, one thing about a lot of the new harvesting equipment our growers have, with the draper style heads, is they can go out and cut beans early in the morning when maybe there's still a dew on. That dew then tends to bring more dust and things like that, which is great. Allows the grower to harvest, But again, we're growing seed, not grain. So a lot of times we push our growers, say, hey, you need to actually wait a little bit longer, get that off so we don't bring that dust into the plant. So again, we're started working closely with our growers. Then we started looking at where in our process do we not have dust pickups. Dust is the enemy of seed treating. And our reps want to be able to do a great job treating product downstream for our customers. And we want to enable that as best we can. And so we started, mapping out from the beginning of our process at our plant, from the time the beans are received to the time the beans go in a box or into our true bulk system, where do we have dust control and where don't we? And we started adding additional dust control to the process. And then we did some work around a mineral oil application. There's actually some mineral oil we use. And one of the things we've learned is there's different, like everything, different systems that work in different ways and different amounts of mineral oil. We found some best practices across locations that different sites were having, and worked to standardize that over the last year as well. And so it was really, I want to give a shout out to our teams at our sites, because it's them digging into it when we get a concern, right? So we got reps that were challenged by those. And, it's that customer first mentality that our teams have, that we want to make sure that we can get the best product to our customer. And sometimes getting the best product to the customer starts with ensuring our reps get the best product they can get to treat, especially in the soybean arena. So definitely took us some time, and it's never done. We did a lot of work, and we actually even have plans going into here to 2026 to make some additional improvements with some dust enhancements, for example. So I would say the one journey for us in production is we're relentless at looking at how we can improve our customer experience and our product. And so any feedback we get, positive or negative, allows us to keep that journey of continuous improvement going. And, we're never going to be done, but we hope to keep raising the bar, because, farmers in planting season, they only get one shot. We want to give them the best shot we can in that.
Ryan, you highlight, the idea when we say quality out in the field, sometimes to a grower, the idea of quality comes into percent germination and those kind of things. But there's certainly a lot more. I mean, you talk about the dust on the soybeans. When we come to quality, one of the things I think about is consistent sizing, both in terms of our soybeans and our corn. I know, we've got one of those technologies that Crystal talks about, or sorters and some of those things. Would you speak to, the color sorters that are in the plant that we use a lot, and just some of those other quality metrics that we look at just beyond germination? Certainly that's one of the most important, but there's a lot of other things when we talk about quality within Pioneer that we're talking about holistically.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, we always talk about genetic and germination, but there's so many aspects of quality, uniformity, so the planters work effectively, right? Especially the onset of new high-speed planters, that has changed how we look at it. You go back 25 years ago, we couldn't measure singulation. Remember that? I can remember when first time precision planting came out, we could measure singulation and what that meant to uniformity. Well, that raised the bar then on what we had to put in the bag and include and improve our uniformity of packaging. Seed treatment and polymers. There's certain things that happen with seed treatment where it can get sticky, and I'm sure we've had all experienced that in a hot, humid spring, right? Well, are there different polymers we need to utilize to lessen that impact? And then, to your point around color and shape sorting, I can remember when the only thing we did was color sort white corn. That was to get yellows out of whites. Now with today's color sorters, we're going after pin size holes of insect damage. We're going after miscolored yellow corn. So yellow corn that may be just a little bit cloudy or smoky, we can take that out. We go after, we use those same color sorters in soybeans, where now we're looking at both color and shape. So how oblong is that soybean, and can we get that more uniform as it goes to the package in the future as well too? So what we do with the color and shape sorting technology over my 28-year career has come so far. Like I said before, it was just truly color. The future of what that technology is going to bring. I anticipate in another 10 or 15 years, we could be optically sorting seed with one of these machines, within, precision, more precision than we have today. And so, it's just going to grow and get better. And we've seen a huge increase in the quality going to the bag, especially in our soybeans, the last several years, with the onset of putting this technology in our facilities. So yeah, we're excited what the future holds in this area of automated and visual technology.
What other things are on the horizon for you guys, Ryan? I mean, when you look at production and you think about the next, let's even just say 5 years, you talk about this potential for optics, but I know there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you guys essentially have an experimental group, if you will, that looks at some of these new technologies and things like that. What are you excited about or potentially looking at that you could share with us today that you think could increase that customer experience in the future?
Yeah, first, I think the work in the field that would go on to understand fertility, and about 65% of our acres are irrigated. So understanding irrigation and water management. I think there's so much to learn in this space that, today we either get it really wet or it gets too dry or we turn on too late. And what we're going to be able to do to help our growers from a fertility and water management in the future, and understanding that's just going to continue to take off, along with biologicals and where do they play. So in the field, that's a big focus. As we move into the plant, the drying technology, and understanding we're the sensors that we're going to be able to put in our bins and understand every dryer bin and exactly how it's handled, and then be able to use, for lack of a better term, big data to then gain insights to how we can handle each product more effectively down the road is going to continue to grow. And then work around traceability. And I jumped to traceability, and that's because we kind of talked about optics. That's just going to continue to grow faster and faster. But traceability from the standpoint of really being able to use the data to understand the genetic potential of each product and its quality parameters, even to the point of, can we predict quality before it even leaves the field to come to the dryer, and have confidence before it even gets to the sheller? Like I talked before, we take it off the ear and put it in a bin. With some of the models and predictions and data tools that we're going to have, I would say, not right away, but in the future, we could see a spot where once we harvest it and we know we dried it at a certain, with all those in-bin sensors, we'll be able to just predict and tell you, here's what the final quality is going to be within a, really a high confidence level. We've been doing some work in that space, but the data and the machine learning and artificial intelligence work it will take to get there, we're on that path. And again, it's going to be an exciting time to see how that data will help us in the future. And by being able to predict quality earlier, and understand its impact, we'll be able to better supply the customer within our reps with the information they need to get the best product placed out there for our farmers.
Wow, that's incredible. You think about as we look into the next 100 years or whatever, I think the AI component will be really valuable. As we kind of wrap up here, Ryan, any other final comments to our listeners as they gear up to plant 2026 crop?
Well, we're looking for, I think there's some farmers planting. It's April, here while we're talking today, it's just getting rolling, getting started. Been getting some great feedback from our reps of getting seed out in the ground. For me personally, the message I want to keep, one, I'm a production guy, and sometimes we always talk about safety. So I am going to say this to our customers. We need you, your families need you. Make the right decision. Planting will get done. Take your time, do the right thing around equipment. Farm accidents and farm equipment is still one of the biggest leading causes of injury, even in today's world with all the great mechanism and farm equipment we have today. And a lot of it's because our customers get in a hurry. right? And I get it. I'm a farmer. There's times I'm on the farm like, oh, I want to get this done. And then I'm like, okay, slow down, do it the right way. So make sure you take the time, do the right thing, be safe for your families out there this spring. Second, just know that there's an army of people behind the Pioneer seed that's going into the ground that's done everything they think they can to provide the best quality product to each one of our sales reps. And we look forward to seeing that product perform on their farm. There's nothing more exciting for me personally when I see the seed that we grew, that I had the opportunity or privilege to be part of a team to grow going in the ground this spring. I always look at the bag tags on my that are on my bags going to my farm. Go, did this come from one of the plants that I work with, and is it going in the ground? And our teams get excited seeing those Pioneer signs go up, going, hey, we had a hand in helping that customer have a successful season. And so those would be the two things. Is we look forward to stay safe, and look forward to seeing those products perform on their farms out there this season.
I don't think I could have said it better. One thing that I think I just want to highlight that I took away from this call was that the quality or the crop that you are planting or have planted in 2026 was made with intention the season before, right? Or like by the farmers and the teams ahead of time. And so thank you, Ryan, to you and your teams for all that you guys do, because if we didn't have you guys, it would be a lot tougher business to be in. So, and tougher environment to be working in. So we appreciate that. And to echo Ryan's comment, everybody, please stay safe as we go through Plant 2026, and we will see you next time.
This has been another episode of Outstanding in Your Field. Like and follow our podcast wherever you are listening. We've got a new episode at least once a month. You can also find us on YouTube by following Pioneer Seeds. You can find me on Instagram at B_K_Schrader.
I'm Crystal Williams. You can contact me at crystal.williams@pioneer.com.
And I'm Carl Jorn. You can follow along with me at CJorn on X or on Facebook at CJorn Agronomy. That's CJOERN.
That concludes this Pioneer Agronomy video podcast. Visit our page on pioneer.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more agronomy insights.